Sometimes it feels like my children are buried under schoolwork and obligations, and I'm holding the biggest shovel. Still, I hear people talk about wanting to extend the school day or send the kids to school for 12 months out of the year. Can that really be a good idea? Scott Brody thinks it's a good idea, provided that summer school doesn't look anything like regular school. You see, Scott has devoted his career to childhood enrichment, and lately he's done a lot of research into 21st century skills. Scott wants us to know that if we're really serious about preparing our kids for the future, we should send them to camp. Scott Brody, thank you for coming on Wise Friends today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Scott, you have been in the business of providing summer camp experiences for children for many, many years. You have had an overnight camp, which you have been founder and perhaps co-founder of, I believe. And it has been a hugely successful enterprise, I know, from experience, having some friends whose kids go there. Now here in Sharon, we're lucky enough to have Everwood Day Camp, which you founded last year, and I know had a hugely successful summer, and we're looking forward to another wonderful summer together. So you have a lot of experience programming educational and recreational programming for children. And in conversations you and I have had, we've talked a lot about the future for kids and what the skills and activities and abilities and areas of interest we need to try and develop in them to prepare them for the future. We hear a lot about 21st century skills. As a parent, I hear that all the time at meetings and in textbooks and in articles. And I always see people, when that term is used, I always see people going, yeah, 21st century skills. And I do it too. But I'm not really sure we all know what that is. So you were kind enough to offer me the opportunity to come on and talk about what those are. You as an educator and others, what are these things when we say 21st century skills? What does that mean to you?
Well, I guess I sort of came upon this information in my search to really try to provide the greatest educational impact for kids that we can within a camp setting. Mm-hmm. So I'm very hungry for knowledge. And, I think most people think of camp as a very sort of traditional experience. Yeah. And it's true, camps have been around for 150 years, and it's a sort of deeply American tradition.
Right.
But the tradition really kind of grew originally out of the education movement. Mm-hmm. Right? So camps were really founded as an extension of school and a complement to school. And over the years, I think the sort of focus shifted a little bit, and people came to identify camp, whether it's overnight camp or day camp, as more of a recreational opportunity, which certainly has great value. Mm-hmm. But I think in a sense the educational identification was a little lost.
Right.
And in recent years, we've sort of come back to that. In the realization that camps really have this amazing opportunity to educate children during the summer months, and for those, some camps do year-round work with kids during out-of-school time. So for me, I was really looking at kind of the questions of today.
Right.
What do the children that we serve today, what do the children of Sharon, for instance, need the most? What is getting squeezed out of school as MCAS comes into focus? Mm-hmm. And as we look ahead, the world is changing dramatically for kids.
Right.
And I think what you and I may have needed when we graduated from high school or college, and the skills that we needed then to navigate the world, to get a job, to be successful in the workforce and in life, are very different than that which our kids are facing. And so I guess the long answer is that the 21st century skills movement is really about asking that question of businesses, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And saying, okay, what do you need in today's emerging graduates? Yeah. And that is really how the skill set was identified.
Right. Now, it's not like the flu shot. Like, oh, take the flu shot and you might be protected from flu, because all these minds have gotten together to decide, okay, this is what you need this season to protect yourself from the flu. When we say 21st century skill set, it's not guesswork anymore. It really has been a product of a lot of deep thinking, research, and as you say, sort of polling and questioning from the top down, from the outside, and from the bottom up. Let's look at this together. And that wisdom has converged now on this group of things that we are looking at trying to really build back in for our kids.
That's right. You know, Tom Friedman, the New York Times columnist, wrote a book a couple of years ago called The World is Flat, about this changing world and about the impact that the internet and connectivity and emerging markets, the ability to work across geographic boundaries, you know, the impact that that has had on us and will have on our kids.
Right.
And as I read that book, I really started to ask myself, okay, you know, let's take a step back here. Let's look at the challenges our kids are facing. And that led me to do this research and really to identify, as you said, the convergence of the educational sort of think tanks and the folks that come up with frameworks about youth development, and then what is really ultimately a, you know, sort of objectively defined set of skills that employers are looking for, right? And that's what's so intriguing about 21st century skills. It's not guesswork. It is companies like Apple and Microsoft and Sesame Street and Marriott and hundreds and hundreds of other employers, small and large, getting together and saying, okay, we're looking not just at the skills we want to see the folks that we hire have when they get out of college or high school, for that matter, but also what is going to help those same people be successful 5 years into their job. What are the skills that are really going to make a difference?
I know there is a fairly large set of those skills. Maybe for an educator it doesn't seem large, but I think for a parent sometimes it can be pretty large. But can we focus on what you would say the top 5 or 6 seem to currently really be? Because depending on your perspective, they don't rank order them exactly the same. But as I was looking at the information that you shared with me, I did see recurring themes. There's a lot of agreement on the part of the people coming through and educating, as well as the people who are looking to then employ. So they're not really that far off from each other. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would. And in fact, you know, when you look at the framework that the Partnership for 21st Century Skills established, which really was this sort of consortium of employers that came together and did this research together to share their information, they identified a set of, I think, about 21 skills. Now, these included the classics, you know, the skills that we are MCAS testing for right now, sort of the 3 R's, right? Plus foreign language and geography and social studies and a variety of other things. But they also included a set of skills which they refer to as applied skills, sort of the higher order, right? So it's one thing to be able to do well in an English class by traditional measures. It's another to be able to be a good oral communicator or a good writer. Those two things are often different. So these are higher order skills because they involve sort of you know, a concoction of a variety of sort of basic skills.
Right, exactly. And I think that when I look at the, you know, top 6 or 7 skills that all of these entities have identified, that is what strikes me. It isn't something you can learn in a classroom, is it?
It is something that I think you can learn some of them in a classroom if you have a school system that is bent on making time for this. And I think Sharon recognizes, the Sharon school system recognizes the importance of some of these skills. But they are not subjects in and of themselves. So let me sort of give you the top 5 or 8.
That would be great.
Okay? So, and I'm ranking them actually in the order of importance that was identified by these employers.
Great.
Okay? This very wide cross-section of employers. Number one, oral communication.
Oral communication.
Oral communication, number one.
Very interesting.
Okay, 95.4% of employers said this is a very important skill from the perspective of a four-year college grad. Right. Oral communication, number one. Number two, teamwork and collaboration. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that very clearly is not, when you're a junior in high school, you're not taking a course in teamwork and collaboration.
Right.
That's something that needs to be embedded in curricula, and it needs to be taught during out-of-school time.
Sure.
Right? Because of the scarcity of time that exists, within today's educational system, during the academic year. Number three, professionalism and work ethic. Okay? So this really means, do you keep your word? Do you show up on time? Are you a reliable person?
Right.
Do you tell the truth? Are you an ethical human being?
Right.
So there's a sort of a values component of this as well.
Right.
And yes, this is not only is it sort of higher order learning, but it is something that kids learn not just in school, but at home.
Right.
Right? And hopefully during their out-of-school time, during their summertime and after-school programming.
Right, exactly. Let's hear the top six and then try and talk a little bit more about them, because it's fascinating, and I want to interrupt you now, but I want to get through that top six because it's amazing to me.
Okay, I'll go down the list. So number 4, written communication. And by the way, these are all still scoring 90 plus.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So as very important, written communication. Number 5, critical thinking and problem solving.
Great.
Okay. And again, such an important thing, such an important interdisciplinary sort of cognitive function that kids need to be able to perform at a high level. This is 92.1% of employers saying, here it is. This is actually what matters the most. After that, 6 and 7 have to do with writing in English and English language and reading comprehension. And then we jump to ethics and social responsibility and leadership. And then there's sort of the traditional, what one thinks of when, most people think of 21st century skills, they think of information technology.
Sure, exactly.
Right? Well, that doesn't come up until 11.
Exactly. That was the one thing I looked at, because in my judgment, I think a lot of parents, when you say 21st century skills, the first thing that we think of is, computers. That must mean computers and technology. And yeah, it does in some sense, but truly when you look at this list, it's the middle of this 21 number list of things. So while we want to expose our children to the use of technology, this isn't the number one thing that makes or breaks it for them necessarily, because technology and people who are capable of using it will be available. The question is, how then are you able to bind them together, motivate them, communicate the goals for a particular job or product that you want to develop, share that information. How do you program people to be inspired or to join your company? You've got that front of house person who is still an essential piece of this whole success story for all of us. And it's that presentation of yourself and the fact that people you are what you say you are kind of thing, and that you can follow through. That is a recipe for success. And it feels like it's not new news. In some ways, but the fact that we need to now decide, we really have to guide, help, and program kids and understand that these are things that we need to be working on from the time that they're really small.
It's absolutely, and it needs to really cut across all of their learning. We're really believers in what's sort of called whole child education, right? And that really means what you're teaching your child at home, what they're learning at school during the school year, what they're learning after school and on weekends, and what they're learning during the summer. And that doesn't mean we need to take our kids and program every moment of their lives, because the truth is, some of these very skills that are deemed so important, like teamwork and collaboration, and some of the pieces that sort of deal with social and emotional intelligence, these are things that are in many ways best learned through playtime,
right,
through negotiating complex social situations, right?
Right.